What is up, everybody? It is Jonathan Wells back with another episode of Loanology, where we dive deep into all things real estate and finances. And today, I actually have a really cool one here queued up. So I was thinking about different topics that I wanted to discuss, and we're going to talk about hedge fund investment companies and how that pertains to residential real estate, right? So obviously, this has been making headlines, due to the dramatic effects it can have on the housing market with availability and prices, and also because there's new legislation that is pushing back, um, and that's starting to, percolate and pushing back on these institutional investors. So first, I want to give you guys an overview here of hedge fund activity in real estate. So just a little bit of background. Over the last few years, hedge funds and other institutional investors have poured billions into buying homes across the country. They've been particularly active during periods of market instability, snapping up everything from single-family homes to large apartment complexes. Now, this is based on two different articles that I found on Realtor.com, explaining different legislation coming through for institutional investors and how that's going to change potentially the real estate market as far as prices go and everything else, right? Just to give a little bit more background too, the hedge funds were pouring a lot of money in it. I think the stat was, a little bit over one out of every four single family homes during 2020, or maybe it was 2022, was purchased by an institutional investor. So, just think about that for a little bit. It's like just over 25% of all single family homes that were purchased in the year 2022 were from an institutional investor, likely outbidding, potentially a first time home buyer with cash, and, purchasing that unit so they could go out and actually rent it out, to a different consumer. So, yeah. So the scale of these purchases is enormous. These funds are often buy properties in bulk, transforming neighborhoods and, in some cases, the very character of housing markets. This trend raises questions about the long-term implications for typical home buyers and the overall, housing ecosystem, which I think is fair. Like you don't want the whole American dream, right, is to own your own home and be able to own property in really a way that not a lot of other countries may have, right? I'm not an expert on real estate outside of the US, just so you know, but I do believe that America is very unique in the way that you can actually own property. Obviously, you're still going to have property taxes, but you actually do own that piece of land, that you're that you have, right? So with institutionalized investors coming in and being able to purchase all these and take more, inventory off the market, it does pose a major threat to a lot of especially first-time home buyers that may not have the capital to compete with, some of these institutional investors. So I do think it is a problem that, we would need to look into. In response to this, there's been massive legislation efforts to rein in these massive purchases. The most talked about piece of legislation is the End Hedge Fund Control of the American Homes Act, which aims to severely limit the ability of these funds to buy and hold large quantities of residential properties. Interestingly, supports for such measures cut across political lines, while both conservatives and liberals expressing concerns over the influence of big money on housing. This bipartisan concern reflects a growing unease about the role of speculative capital in areas traditionally dominated by individual homeowners. So again, I think this is one of those. I'm not a super big political person, right? I see myself as more of an independent than anything else, but I do think that this is an issue that, you should be able to get behind regardless of what side of the aisle you lean on. There needs to be homes for Americans to purchase at an affordable and a reasonable price. Obviously, you're not going to go live in Malibu for $200,000, right? That's not a thing. But you need to be able to have options to purchase, your first home, for less than $1 million, or competing with, some large institutional investor that can outbid you by, ten or $15,000. which again, it's been an issue for a lot of people. So, especially in the Midwest, that's honestly kind of one of the better areas to purchase because you can get good quality for, not as expensive of a price. And as time goes on, I think you will see the Midwest continue to blow up, as people, potentially move out of areas that, are may become less desirable. Who knows? So the question though that is being posed is: will clamping down on housing or on hedge funds actually make homes more affordable? So according to an economist, Thomas Ryan from the Capital Economics, the answer might be no. Ryan points out that despite their visibility, these large institutions own a relatively small slice of the national housing market. So I believe the stat was they actually own, institutional investors own between 3 and 5% of all homes in America. But again, as those numbers creep up, right, this is, potentially just the beginning of that, right? Obviously, there's been companies that have owned, real estate for longer periods of time than what we've seen in recent years. But as this trend continues, who's to say in 20 years, they don't own 50% of the market, right? Or, even if they controlled honestly like 10% of the market, you could still see a major pricing shift, as time moves on, right? So, indeed, data shows that most real estate investments still come from smaller mom and pop investors. Large hedge funds, while significant, represent only a fraction of all the transactions. So, their direct impact on housing prices might be less than we assume. Again, in my opinion, I think that's still, for the time being, right? I think that could change, depending on how much they're able to purchase and how those things progress. Now, this also leads us to consider, the broader implications. Even if a hedge fund activity is curtailed, the fundamental challenges of the housing affordability and availability remain. So, factors like zoning laws, construction costs, broader economic conditions, they play a far more decisive role in determining housing prices currently, right? So, again, in the here and now, yes, those are all factors that control the housing market, probably more than institutional investors. But again, this is one of those things where it's coming to light now. I think that, as a consumer, we should probably be getting ahead of this, before it's too late on that end. So, as a wrap up today's episode, it's clear that while hedge fund activity in the housing market is a concern, it's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. To really tackle housing issues, a more comprehensive approach is needed, one that looks at everything from a local policy to national economic trends. So stay informed and engaged, especially in new policies and proposals as they emerge. Thank you for joining us on Loanology. Make sure to tune in next time for more insights in the ever changing and evolving world of real estate. So, again, just to wrap this up and get you guys some closing thoughts, I personally, think that it's not that big of a deal right now, but it very well could be in the not so distant future. So what I would advise you to do is if you're thinking about purchasing your first home, contact me, shoot me a text at 219-689-3626, or you can leave a comment on this episode, or you can send me an email at Wells, WELLS, at leader, the number one.com. So that's John Wells at leader1.com. Would love to chat with you. If you do not own a home and you're planning on purchasing it, I would definitely jump in and make that decision. You know, um, Obviously, as soon as you're financially ready and it makes sense for you. But again, definitely recommend that you get into the market sooner rather than later, just as more of these things are coming out. And then, if you already own a home and you want to see what your home's worth, you can use my contact information. Let me know. I can get you some information on what your home is worth. Um, and if you got any good information out of this, please share it with 3 friends. I would love to grow the audience here and see, what we can really do. So I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you all so much, and yeah, have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.